Hello, everybody. Hi. So nice to see everyone. Oh, we have many people here who were here last week. So they want to hear more. We want to hear more from Rajesh. Of course we do. More wisdom. Amazing. Okay, I think we're going. So somebody's actually listening while taking their dog for a walk. I can see that cute little dog. I love it. Amazing.
True.
Can you see? I love it. I don't know who that is, but it's really nice to see. And maybe if everyone can just, whoever that is. Hello. Oh, it's Rosie. Is that Rosie? I think it may be. I'm not sure who that is. But if everyone can just switch on their cameras just to say hi, and then you can switch them off again. I promise I won't make you keep them on the whole time, because it's just nice to see people's faces rather than black screens, and it makes us feel like we're talking to human beings rather than the computer. So it is so nice. Lovely to see you all. Thank you for joining us. Really nice to have you with us, and it is really a pleasure. And then also thank you to Rajesh for joining us again, taking up his Saturday afternoon, because he's in India and it's the afternoon in India, to join us and continue talking to us about this, like a very important subject. I mean, last week, I don't know if you were all here last week. If you, I know lots of you were. If you weren't, I strongly recommend you catch up and watch the last week's video, which is on YouTube and on the Wellbeing at Home website. If you subscribe to our newsletters, you will see the links on there. Or if not, you just go to Wellbeing Escapes on YouTube and you can find it there. So I really highly recommend you watch that, because it's such an important subject. And honestly, I really believe this. Our human connections are one of our most integral components to our well-being. I mean, you know, we're not here to just be apart from others, and our connections are so important to us, whether it's with our friends, our families, our colleagues, our communities. It's just so important to have that connection. And there's many studies that show people who have, you know, communities that are thriving communities have great longevity in terms of health, but also health, you know, they don't just live to an older age. They live with quality lives, and that comes from being in that community and being able to connect with each other in a way that's meaningful. So I really think this subject is very important. Anyway, so let's dive into the subject again. Rajesh, thank you. Welcome for coming back. We covered a lot last week, but it was obvious that we needed a part two. And you're so gracious in allowing us to delve into your wisdom and get more into this subject. I want to dive straight in and talk about the concept that is centered on allowing ourselves to be open to others versus keeping our independence. And I heard this concept you talk about, well, actually it was Smith who talked about this concept on your video for your retreat, about your Embracing Connection retreat. And you know, there's a lot of work going on in this area around vulnerability and showing our vulnerability, but this sense of like keeping our independence was that intrigues me. I thought that's actually a really good way of looking at it. Can we talk about that a bit, please? Can you talk to us about that?
Yes. See, when we start as children, and when we start connecting and relating to people, we are quite open. And we openly share our love, we openly receive whatever comes our way. Then slowly what happens is our brain, as it grows, it starts expecting a repetition of a previous experience. So it says like, hey, you know what? Last time you smiled at me, and I believe that you would smile at me again. So then there is a first disappointment, a disappointment in whatever way. Somebody is trying to, just for no reason or no fault of theirs, something happens. So when we get hurt, we slowly close ourselves. We start creating mechanisms in ourselves, how to protect myself. Should I expose myself the next time the same way and get hurt? Or should I become more defensive? So people learn to protect themselves in different ways. Some people isolate themselves too much. Some others go in repeatedly getting hurt, and then they believe like, being separated and isolated is much more painful. That loneliness is much more painful than the actual hurt of getting closer. So those are the people who would go into a codependent relationship and then end up in that space. So, or the others would take the step towards what they call independence. I would say real independence is when you have the choice to walk in towards the other person or walk away. Most people who speak about independence don't have that independence. They're just scared, so they run. So running is not independence. Independence arises from a place of awareness. Independence arises from a place of courage. So if we have the courage, that's what vulnerability is. I would call it like a positively vulnerable. That is, we are vulnerable not because we are weak. We are vulnerable because we choose to, and we step into that space of uncertainty, of a potential rejection, of potentially not being loved the way we want to be loved. So we take that step. Who can take that step? The person who is aware, the person who is ready and knows how to handle if rejection happens. So otherwise, we oscillate. We oscillate between the two ends. One end is trying to protect ourselves, so isolating ourselves. The other end is getting hurt repeatedly and falling into relationships which do not fulfill, but we have this fantasy in our mind that, oh, this is the one, oh, this is the next, oh, this is the one. So we are constantly caught up in that. Both these extremes cause us suffering. One extreme, when we are trying to be too much defensive about life and people, it creates a lot of isolation and loneliness. Then from that loneliness, when we encounter a relationship, we end up overexposing ourselves. We end up actually losing the plot because we are not aware. We are just desperate. And the other end, prolonged exposure to hurts in relationships makes us either numb to that we don't even realize that we are getting hurt. Other people would be like appalled, like, hey, why are you in that relationship? And we would say like, I don't know, it's normal. This is how people are. But the reality is we are so numbed, we are so hurt, and then we internalize all those hurts. And then it manifests us in other ways. It manifests in being eternally unhappy or sad. And then, have you seen some people over years, over time, their face takes up an emotion, a permanent scowl, a frown, or a sense of sadness or anger that kind of settles in their body and their mind and in their face. That's because of prolonged exposure to all of these things.
And also that prolonged exposure can end up in disease very much. That's it's been proven too. There's so much you said just now. I want to unpack it. There was so much in there. so much wisdom in like a paragraph. Okay, I'm going to take it back a step, because at the beginning you said when your brain is used to, it's training to take signals from people. Okay, so I want to go back to what causes people to be hurt in the first place, or to misconstrue, because as you say, you smile at someone, they don't smile back, you immediately feel put out. Okay, you immediately, so it's like a defensive mechanism. Oh my God, they don't like me, or they're rude, or there's a problem with this person, I don't like them. You know, we come to a judgment, an immediate judgment. And in fact, that person just may be having a bad day. You know, there could be a million different reasons why they didn't respond with the smile. The smile is just a metaphor. It's just an example. And just like Aqua says here, people take things very personally. Like some people are really sensitive to that. Where does that come from? What causes that sensitivity?
It is, see, it is a learned behavior, you know. So when we see people around us being sensitive, when we see our mother responding in a way, you know, and our father being super sensitive, then we think this is the standard. This is what happens. This is, but having said that, this is only one factor that affects us. It is also your physical, your constitution. You know, some people have a strong nervous system. Some people have, as we say in Ayurveda, you know, some people have a predominance of the wind energy or the fire energy or the water energy. And people with more water energy are more calmer and they can absorb more of these things. People with wind, more like me, you know, I'm more wind and a bit more fire, then the water element is very less. So for me, so easy to feel rejected, so easy to feel, oh, it's all about me. You know, as Aqua was mentioning, it's taking things personally becomes so easy. And the response also is quick. So it depends on the body constitution, it depends on the atmosphere and experiences that we have during that phase. But overall, I think, you know, one of the main reasons is our experiences are centered around ourselves. I am important in my story. You know, you could be important in your story, but in every story, I am important. You know, have you ever had a dream where you are not important? No. So exactly, so we are important in that story. So that means all attention will be on our emotional well-being or our identity being preserved or enhanced. So wherever there is a situation when our identity is being disturbed, an identity could be as simple as I am lovable, you know, I am really good, I am beautiful, I am intelligent. So any of these things. And as children grow up after a year and a half or whatever, their self becomes stronger and stronger. That means they have an identity that is starting to build up. Once the identity builds up, a lot of hurts start coming our way because the world and life doesn't respect our identity because it's just in our head. So the world is what it is. And the more and the bigger our identity is, the more we get hurt. Our expectations are higher, our expectations are more solid, and then we get hurt. So that is why having parents or people around us growing up, when we are growing up, who exhibit flexibility, who exhibit letting go, who exhibit kindness, who exhibit these qualities which are expanded qualities. If we have them, then we also acquire those qualities to let go. But if we live in a small community, like in today's micro families, we have only 2 examples in front of us if we are lucky even. So, and those 2 examples, we don't have much experience of how else to behave in life, how else to respond to life. So these are the reasons why we get hurt easily.
That's really interesting. So it's learned from our immediate family, as you say, and especially when there's microcosm there, you know, we don't have much to compare it with, and our own constitution, because some people are like that. I mean, I've seen this, I've observed this as I've got older, even in terms of cultural, like some cultures are like naturally suspicious of everybody and they think they're out to get them. You know, there are some cultures like that who are like, I mean, a lot of people here know my family's from Cyprus, okay? And Cyprus has been invaded so many times over the years. And and the people that can tend to be suspicious, especially the older generation. They can be suspicious of everyone. So it's like whoever you meet, they're out to get you, rather than looking in with a much more open perspective. And I kind of analysed that myself, and I thought, well, that comes from, of course, being, attacked and invaded so many times that has become part of the DNA of that culture. So there is that, but I guess that runs in families as well. Some families who have had to harden themselves for whatever reason, whatever trauma they've been through as a family. And again, it gets passed down. This like ancestral trauma gets passed down. And so, I kind of observe that. How do you pull yourself out of that? If you've got, if you've grown up in a family that was naturally suspicious or oversensitive, just gets upset about everything, I mean, we have, like in England, our Britishness is very much about being polite. So if somebody isn't polite, we have another area there to look at. So if someone isn't polite, we get immediately upset by that. We feel it, like we feel it in our bodies. I've seen that happen to me. If someone's not someone to say thank you, how dare you not say thank you to me? But it doesn't mean that person's a bad person. They could have just forgotten to say thank you. So I think there is, these like cultural differences. How can we break away from it, Rajesh?
Before we even think about breaking away, we need to become aware of where we are caught. So most often we don't even know that we are caught up in a small circle of expectations, behavior patterns, and values, views, and perceptions. So we are caught up in that space. So that's why, I usually tell people to bring more kindness in your relationship, for the simple fact, what you see as normal could have been denied to the other person. They could have no clue at all. They could have no clue about how to do that. It's like as simple as something like giving a hug. How many people we found out who are incapable of giving a proper hug?
Yes, so true.
Because they've never had that proper experience in their life. So you are trying to, or you are expecting something from the other person. They have no clue. So it is not that easy to break these shackles. So first is we become aware of, where am I caught up, and how am I so sensitive and getting triggered easily around certain areas, and what I'm incapable of. So we start there, and in the second step, you look at what is around you, what is possible. What are the different ways that people engage? And what is basically, you don't have to go out and study other people. You can study the people that come to you. So you look at people who are there, somebody who's trying to hug every time, and then how do you feel around that? Do you like stand like a statue and like, oh my goodness, when is this going to end? So then you realize in that moment of awareness, like, oh, this is supposed to be a pleasant experience. Why am I resisting it? So then we ask that question. See, there is an innate fear to an experience that we are not had before. There is a natural fear around that. So we expose ourselves step by step and take in the actual experience instead of coming from our prejudice or presumptions. Like Aqua was mentioning just now in the chat that you need to, in Jamaica, everyone hugs everyone. So as an Indian, I've never got hugged. We never hug in India. We have this awkward place where when I goes to someone's house, we stand there and then they say, come in. And then we say like, okay. And then, we walk in and then sit there and nobody touches each other. It's like a bit of that culture, and particularly across sex, like, men and women, it is super awkward. Nobody does anything, but then it doesn't feel awkward for us because it is normal. There is no physical touch in any of these things. even with my father, when I grew up, traveled around the world, came back, and then gave him a hug one day, and he had no clue what to do with that. He was just standing there, and it had never happened. So we start taking in that experience, just opening ourselves to this new experience, say like, hey, this sounds new. Let me experience that. There will be a little bit of fear. There will be an awkwardness. I don't know. It's okay. Take it in. This is how transformation happens. And it is nothing new because we're all being transforming. Many of us in this call might have been married or in a relationship for a long period as well. And then you can see very well how you have changed over this 5 years, 10 years, 20 years of that relationship. You have imbibed so many of those qualities, what you never were used to before. And then now you say like, yeah, I do this because my wife taught me that. Or my husband just we started doing this. And those are actually qualities of the other people. They have that experience and slowly we've taken that in. And that starts when we start trusting. So everything comes together, a certain amount of trust that gets built up in a relationship, and then we start taking in what the other person is giving. So awareness, openness, then coming from a place of trusting, then you start sharing what you have learned. So the more we share, we see how it can help or how it can affect the other person. And then we start taking them in. So with all of these things, we start expanding. In the olden days, they say, you read a book and you expand your knowledge, you visit countries and cultures, and then you expand yourself much bigger. So in today's world, we also have to expand our minds and our hearts. And that is what happens in relationships.
I love that. Expand your mind and heart. That's what it's all about, really, isn't it? It is. How about if you're the other end of the spectrum, where you are so open and you want, you trust everybody, you love everybody. I mean, I know people like that, and they're beautiful people. And are there any dangers around being like that? Is it better to be that way? I mean, some people will say, well, then they're more open to getting disappointed or taken advantage of, or all those things. But are they? Are they really?
See, I would not say like, we are taken advantage of. We all take advantage of the situation. It's this, I would not say like we are bad people for that because of that. We all would try to maximize our comfort. We all try to maximize the amount of love that we can get and try to change the other person for our comfort. If you are willing to change and give up whatever you have, your side of things, and then it benefits me, and as long as you're not protesting, I'm going to walk the whole mile into that space. And maybe I will not be even aware that it is hurting you. So that is why it's important that we have to communicate that I am hurt right now, or I am disturbed, or something is wrong for me. So that is why it is important to communicate. Answering your question, Stella, yes, there is a danger in all of these things as well. One of the reasons is, why do you exhibit this behavior? Is it because you are a pleaser? Is it because you cannot say no? Is it because you are afraid that if you say no, or if you exhibit anything like a boundary, then you will be stopped. You will not be loved. You will not be respected. You can't be rejected. So if this behavior arises from that place of fear, then it is constant stress and pain and suffering, because we cannot let it go, but then we will be like, pulled and pushed in all the time. So importantly, any behavior should be gauged from where it arises from. What is the fundamentals? Am I being defensive? Then whatever you do from the defensive place is going to be hurtful or hurting others. So people in this end of the spectrum, they should learn to say no or learn to protect themselves, but they should start improving their self-esteem. They should start improving their self-esteem, because many people believe I exist only in the eyes and appreciation of others. So they rise and fall, rise and fall. It's like a proper Instagrammer, they rise and fall with each like and or a dislike or whatever it is, and that is quite stressful in this world. So that's why it's important they start developing their own other areas of identities. This happens to people, particularly who have weak identities in other areas, or they believe they have a weak identity in emotional areas. And then some people believe, like, I don't know, I will never be loved by anybody. That's what I believe. So whoever tries to love even a bit, I want to hold on to them in spite of all the other negatives around the relationship, even if it is toxic. So, in India, they used to have a saying, the person who slaps you is the person who loves you so much. I think men created it so that they can beat the women around. So, but something like that. But when some people start believing these things about themselves, that they are incapable of being loved, they want to hold on to one person who shows a little bit of love even. So they need to have a good look at themselves, but I would start with strengthening the other areas of identity.
Wow, that's there's a lot in that, what you just said too. We could go really deep on that, because it's interesting if you have this low self-esteem, because there are these two types of people. There are the people, I guess, who are just more open, like open individuals, and are happy to create relationships really openly without defenses. And I see that as being actually quite healthy, because it's fine. You're going in thinking, okay, this is, you're going in with a view of success, rather than, oh gosh, what could happen if I develop a link with this? And this could be with friendships, meeting new people, it could be, life partners, it could be across everything. So I personally see that as quite healthy, where you just go in with an open mind and you say, okay, in my view, people are inherently good. They're not out to get me. They're not out to attack me, and that's fine. But then on the flip side, as you're saying, there are those people who have that low self-esteem, who are latching onto anything and kind of being taken advantage of in the process, and not being aware of it, because they're so grateful to have some form of love or affection or something around that. And that's a deeper work that comes from our own work, I guess, of building our own self-esteem around that. Okay, I want to talk about like relationships that don't serve us anymore, but I do want to expand a little bit on this whole thing about vulnerability, because last week you told us about that lady with the makeup who didn't see anyone without having makeup on, whether it was even her partner, would wake up in the morning and put her makeup on before her partner woke up, and all of that. And that for me was a classic example of not showing her vulnerability, of not showing who she really was. Can you give us some other examples? Because that was quite an extreme example. I don't think there are many people, or maybe there are, I don't know. I haven't, maybe there's varying degrees of that, but that was quite extreme. But can you give us some other examples of not showing your vulnerability, of not being vulnerable, that are maybe a bit more subtle, and maybe we'll recognize those in ourselves?
Yeah, we have a lot of examples in everyday life. Uh, the person who says sorry as fast as possible, they are actually invulnerable. They say, "Oh, sorry, sorry, sorry." Stop talking about it. Don't escalate. If you say, "I made a mistake," I agree, sorry, end of story. If the other person persists with it, for like, "Hey, but listen to me," but no, 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 stop it. So this is actually being invulnerable, hidden behind a good manners. It's like, I have a good manners of saying sorry, but then I'm so defensive around this whole experience. I don't want you to explain one more line. I don't want us to talk about it. So many relationship this happens.
So sorry is just a way to shut it down. I've said sorry and we're moving it on.
Yes.
I mean, open up that. Okay, that's interesting.
Yes. So don't bring it up. And the same thing, like, you told once, I heard it, you're not talking about it again. So these are actually invulnerable people, and they're really afraid of. See, why are we invulnerable? Because we don't want to be exposed. We don't want to be seen as what we are, other than what we want to show. When we come closer in a relationship, much, much closer, it is really difficult. It's really, really difficult to. Sorry, I'm losing my thought because I read that
But
chat.
don't read the chat.
It's popping up in my screen.
I'll read the chat. You just talk. Yeah.
So, no problem, no problem. See, why are we invulnerable? Because we are scared of being exposed. No, I don't want to be seen this way, though I am. I'm an impatient person, but I don't want to be seen as that impatient person. I'm a selfish person, or I'm an unaware person. Then I don't want to be seen. And particularly when somebody sees it, brings it up, either in personal relationships or in a group, then I feel a strong need to defend myself and to protect myself. So the whole purpose of actually spiritual growth is to overcome this, to recognize what you are and allow yourself to be that. We believe that, oh my God, if they know that I am a selfish person, they will put a stamp on me for the rest of my life as being selfish. That is our fear. But in reality, say your partner or your parent or even your children, they don't put such a stamp because they've seen you in all forms all the time. So they would say, like, my mother is selfish now, but then 15 minutes later, my mother is now loving. So that's what they would see. But because we are so scared of it, of showing ourselves, we ourselves are also not the same. Sometimes we exhibit one quality, and then in slightly different situation, we exhibit a completely different quality. So then why are we so afraid of being judged? Why are we so afraid of being judged on small things? Vulnerability starts with small, small things. We speak lies. Why do we lie? Lie to protect ourselves. And protect what? Protect our image. We believe we have an image about ourselves. That lady, the extreme example, is actually it's a physical image. But in other cases, it's all a mental image or an emotional image. So we are constantly trying to protect an image, which is mostly a lie. The image itself is a lie because we are people who are changing all the time. But we in our head believe about an image and we are trying to protect that image. So in that whole cycle of trying to protect ourselves, we are closed and we get so easily hurt. And we push away people. And we feel isolated. Then we want to come closer. Then we open up and then they see what we don't want them to see. So the cycle continues again and again and again.
Yeah. Because we're all multifaceted beings and we've all got all these elements in us, at some point in our lives, we've all got them. It's interesting, but we want to hide it, or that's a really interesting perspective. We want to hide it. Maybe we want to hide it from ourselves as well. And we don't want to, if we're having a moment when we're feeling selfish, we've done something selfish, we don't want to accept that. So we don't
Yes,
want to.
we believe I'm better than this. But I would say, no, in this moment, you are not better than this, you are this.
You are.
In this moment, actually, there is no other better stuff, because this is what life created you in that moment. This is what you are. So
Yeah.
all you have to do is to say, oh, in this moment, I was selfish, right? Yeah, I was selfish. I'm sorry about that. If you say that,
Yeah.
that is the best solution for the situation, because the other person wanted to say that exact thing and you said that, and then they say like, yeah, man, but we can all be selfish sometimes. That's it.
Yeah. And you've
So
totally diffused it just by doing that. That's just such a perfect way of managing that, because you've become aware of it yourself. You've openly said it. Oh my gosh, guys, I was selfish there at that moment. I'm sorry, I'm selfish. The other person, then it's totally diffused. The other person then says, oh yeah. But we all are at times. So you've also created an awareness in them. It's so interesting. That's just such a great little technique.
yes,
The
but
defensiveness goes away. Yeah.
it takes a lot of courage,
Yes, it takes courage.
particularly in a relationship where you have history.
Yes.
Doesn't, yes, of course, yes, accountability, yes, but particularly if you have a history, it doesn't work right away, because they continue to judge in the momentum of the past as like, ah, yeah, is this a new technique you learned somewhere so that you can, fight me or deflect me? But if you are consistent, and not blaming them, even if they are not acknowledging your vulnerability, this is the next step. People who say they are vulnerable and open and accepting, they do it once, twice, and then they say like, I tried, it doesn't work, because the other person doesn't recognize me, it's their fault from here on. No, it is not their fault, because they are functioning from the momentum of the past, either the past in this relationship or their own past. So you have to be consistent in being accountable, opening up. And what is the worst thing? They already know that you are a judgmental, that you are selfish, that everything they already know. So you are just trying to cover yourself in some kind of a thing, covering your face, and then you say like, it's not there, it's not there, it's not there. It's not going away. So if we actually open it up, if we accept that little space, something beautiful will happen. The same thing. Let me bring up an example here that happens. Say in a relationship, there is an argument, and one person becomes emotional, and the other person doesn't know what to do. So usually the person who doesn't know what to do is usually a man. So this person doesn't know what to do in this scenario. So what do they do usually? They walk away, because I need some air. So I'm going for a walk, or I'm going to be busy with some other work, or I'm sorry, but it's your problem to solve. Or they come into the room every few minutes and then ask like, are you okay now? I said, sorry, you should be okay by now, right? Why are you still continuing to be emotional? Stop it, stop it, stop it. So what is the truth? The truth is they don't know what to do when you are emotional. So the simplest way, they think like they should know. I'm saying like, no, you don't know. Why don't you go and sit next to this person who is emotional and say, actually, I don't know what to do. I'm sorry that you are feeling this way, but I have no clue what to do. Then this person actually can direct you, hold my hands. And then like, I would say, like, just hold your hand. Okay, hold. Okay, do you want to, I don't know what to do next. Give me a hug or say sorry. Just follow. If you don't know, please follow. That is the easiest way.
That's true vulnerability. Oh, he's frozen. Is Rajesh frozen for everybody? Yes, okay, it's not just me. Okay, he'll be back in a second. But just picking up from that subject there, I mean, in my view, that's like true vulnerability, because yeah, if you don't know, just follow, but to say, I don't know how to handle this situation, which is making me feel uncomfortable, then you're softening the situation immediately and allowing that to happen, and reaching out to the other person. Whereas a lot of people, I would say that what he described there was a classic male situation. That was classic man woman, but I would say a lot of people, women as well as men, are, when they don't know what to do, they become defensive and they impose that on the other person, like it's your fault that you're feeling bad because you're not pulling yourself together. I've said what I've had to say. It's an interesting proposition. Oh, I hope Rajesh can come back to us. We're right at that crux point there. Let's see. Hopefully he will. Has anyone got anything to add or say? Aqua, you're giving us some great little snippets here. History in the momentum of the past. I love that. It's true. But I think Rajesh is right in that we need to try and be aware, and it is a practiced technique almost, because it has to be consistent, because in other words you confuse everybody else, you know, and or confuse the person that you're having that relationship with. Has anyone here?
Sorry, Stella, I'm back.
It's okay. I was just rabbiting on there until you came back, but it's fine. I knew you would come back. I was just about to ask everybody, because it was really interesting what you were saying there, about, you know, like, okay, I don't know what to do. And in that scenario, like, people get defensive and blame the other person because they're feeling bad and they don't know what to do, you know. But I was just about to ask everybody here, has anyone, now that Rajesh has said this to us, recognized the time that we've done that? Like, we weren't aware of our own defensiveness or our own ability to really connect with a part of us that we didn't want to recognize, you know, a part of us which could have been selfishness or, you know, being angry or whatever. Is anyone vulnerable enough to admit that? No, I'm getting those. That's fine. So
Stella, may I continue? I wanted to complete that thought.
Sure.
But to do that, as we mentioned, to become vulnerable in that moment, to allow ourselves to be seen as what we are, requires one important training. I would call it, I even mentioned it last week, I would call it the training to learn to suffer properly, to learn to address our hurts. Because, you know, when we start doing this, our ego will still be there and then we'll get hurt. So if we are repetitively getting hurt, it is not possible to keep ourselves open, because there's a natural defensive mechanism that would come in. So that's why we need to resolve our hurts. So if we learn how to resolve our hurts properly, then we know, okay, I'm open. If they reject me badly, if they judge me badly, I know what to do. So I immediately go back and put my things and then get out of it and then move on. So we need to learn that. You know, one of the important things that we will also be teaching in the retreat is how to handle emotions, and particularly hurts or guilt or any of those emotions, disappointments, properly, without leaving any residue within you. No, it's not like shutting it off. It's not like swallowing it. It's not like throwing it out. It is actually responding to it properly, and with right awareness and right emotional intelligence. So we need to do that work to become more vulnerable.
Yeah, Amazing. Thank you. I just wanted to say also, I mean, I know you're going to be doing, if people can't come to the retreat in April, because it's soon, I know you're going to be doing other retreats in other places in the future, but you do also do one-to-one work, right? You do your private work that you can do to access. And I'm just going to put it in chat now, because the website is Mindfulness Beyond, yes?
Yes, mindfulnessandbeyond.org. You
Yes.
can find
And
that.
beyond, yes, and beyond.
Beyond.org.
Sure.
And you can find me and my wife. She's also a teacher and mentor.
Yeah.
So yes, we work.
So if you do want to reach out to Rajesh and do some one-to-one work, he's available for you there. So coming back to our subject, can we talk a little bit about codependent relationships? What exactly is a codependent relationship?
When this is my view on it. When we are dependent dependent for our emotional needs from only one person or a few people. So our emotional needs are basically locked within one person or a few people. So that means we rise and fall all the time, and we even say like, I exist and I am because of you, and which is not true. I am because of every other factor that comes into my life, including this other person, they also. But then we believe we are only that much. So then we end up in a relationship wherein our entirety of our identity and existence is tied up with the other person or tied up with their approval. And this happens in all forms of relationship. It can be with a parent, it can be with their children. Now, how many times I've seen in my own families, people say, I live for my children, If anything happens to them, that's it, my life. And if they reject me, and that's it. So it's like, it's also a codependent relationship, being so much dependent. And that is unhealthy for both in the relationship.
Yeah, yeah. And so that is their meaning in life is wrapped up in other people's needs, basically. So if because you have a lot of these codependent relationships around people who are just there to support others, or some people become addicted to that too, right? So if you have, like, especially situations, I don't want to downplay it, because I know some people just have no choice, around carers, and they care for another individual, and then they lose their sense of self, and their whole life is around that other individual, and so then they don't know who they are. That is codependent too. It's interesting. I saw that with my grandmother. Looked after my grandpa for many years. He was very, very ill, and when he passed away, I remember watching her and thinking, gosh, this could go either way now. And she just reinvented herself. She became a new woman and reinvented herself and took up all these new hobbies and found who she was. And actually her character totally changed. It was really interesting to watch that. But that was kind of classic codependency, where she was just so, her whole life was him, and then when she stepped away, you see a lot of that, I guess. But I think that wasn't, that, it couldn't be helped. He needed to be looked after, and there was no one else. And so, there are a lot, I don't want to downplay those situations, because there are a lot of those situations. But I think there are other situations where, as you say, people have that, they just do that voluntarily without the need, and they let go of their sense of self. So that's like the opposite extreme, I guess, of being really closed, and then the opposite extreme is that, and that is that self-esteem and working on yourself and who you are. Now, my final question before we wrap it up is, how can you be aware if you have a pattern around relationships? You know, like you attract the same kind of people into your life, you have the same issues with relationships. And again, it doesn't have to be a romantic partner. It could be your friends, it could be even the people you work with, or all of those things. It's like you're just in that same cycle over and over. Some people normalize it, and then they say, oh, well, it's just everyone else, it's not me. You know, it's just other people. How do you become aware of that, of those patterns?
See, we start with becoming aware of the pain and suffering it causes us. Otherwise, we would not know. And otherwise, nothing wrong about that. But we start with the pain and suffering it causes us, or doubts, and then the lack of confidence. So we start seeing that. We start seeing. So these are all different forms of pain and suffering. So become aware of your pain and suffering first. And second step, stop blaming others for that situation. Stop blaming the conditions. Stop blaming your culture. Stop blaming like, oh, this is the family dynamics. This is how it works. Oh, this is the corporate culture and this is how it works. So stop blaming the outside world for that. It could be the outside world could be responsible for that situation. But do you want a solution, or do you want to just assign blame? So we cannot change the external scenario in most cases, unless the other person or the situation is also willing to change. So, connected to the second step is take responsibility for what you are going through. So, from pain, you take responsibility to solve your problem, to open up yourself, to end your suffering. So, once you take that step, then you start observing, wait, what is my trigger point? What are my expectations? Where am I caught up? What is this habit? You know, the truth about reality is when we are caught up in a world of our own, we only see what we want to see. We don't see the other opportunities there. We don't see people who are really loving, people who are really caring. And there are all these opportunities to get out of this loop. But we will not be able to see them because we are consistently watching only the one that is causing us pain, and we are used to it. So once you start questioning your expectations, questioning your and observing your habits around that, then you will start seeing other things. When you start seeing other things, but then this is persistent, like, yeah, I know I should not be doing this, but I don't have a choice. So I usually say that's a good place to be, because you are partially aware. You are not aware enough to shift, but you are aware enough to know. Don't give up in that point, at that point. Because many people give up and say like, oh, awareness doesn't work. But no, you have to strengthen your awareness from that point. So strengthen your awareness. You can do any meditations. You can do any form of meditation, any form where you are becoming more aware of your condition, of what is happening in your mind, what is happening in your emotional state. So you become more aware of that. Then, from that step, you actually open up to see your belief system underlying. You know, what stops us from experiencing life is our belief system. We believe I cannot be loved. We believe I cannot take a break. You know, the kind of codependent relationship that you were talking about, you know, I see it in my family with my mom and dad. And my mom used to close herself off because she would say like, I cannot travel anywhere because I need to feed dad, I need to give him his medicines. And then so that's it. I go nowhere. But then, you know, there was a situation in life where she has to, when her mom was sick, so she has to leave. And first few days she called up like, is everything okay? Is everything okay? Is he taking this? Is he taking that? After third day, she didn't want to come back. She stayed there for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. She was actually happy, but she could break away a bit, And since then, she's like slowly breaking away. She said, like, no, I've lived in the shadows for 50 years. And so, but it is possible. But when people, through circumstances or through their own will, if they can open that up, so it is possible to get out of that situation. So that is why we have to question our belief system, underlying that one. What is my belief system around this? Then you question your belief system. Is it absolutely true? Is it absolutely true? Once you question the belief system, it breaks because it is not true. It's just a statement that we repeated 100 times or 1,000 times. So when you question that with awareness, it usually breaks.
Yeah.
Then we open up. So it is possible to break our patterns, but some patterns take longer. It needs more energy, more attention, and more attention span, more actual practice. And that's why I would suggest, like, be at it. Be at it. You would always improve. We may not get to the point where we believe in our head as improvement, like one day I will be completely free. We may not get there because that is only a fantasy. In real life, we would make those choices. We would actually become free. And becoming personally, internally free is actually living life. Then you have all the choices. Till then, we don't have choices. We believe we have choices. We don't have. An unaware person doesn't have choices. Only an aware person with right wisdom and understanding has choices. Then they have a choice to step into any situation, to help anybody and step away, to receive love and then step away, to give love and then step away. So there is always a choice to step away for such people. With those, so culminating our earlier conversation, such people can always be open. If your openness comes from such an understanding of life, like, what, they give me love. If it is for 5 minutes, I take it. If it is for 2 minutes, I take it. If it is not even given, I still take it. So if you are with that understanding, then you can be open all the time.
Yeah. But having a true connection with others. I mean, this is a bigger spiritual conversation about connectedness and having that we are all connected in a way that we're not all separate beings. We're all connected in the universe, and that's just a bigger spiritual conversation. But it is very much coming down to our relationships and knowing that it is amazing. And I did put in the intro that in the newsletter about recognizing when relationships don't serve us anymore. But I feel like we have to do a lot of work on ourselves before we get to that point, don't we? Oh no, he's frozen again. On that very important question. Oh goodness. Okay. I think we will leave it there. But coming back to that question, yeah, it's fine. Thank you for all being with us, and have a lovely lovely week ahead and weekend. Enjoy yourselves. Remember to be vulnerable and allow the suffering and all those things, all that magic that that Rajesh shared with us. It's just incredible stuff. And I want to just applaud you all on taking time to come along and knowing that, like working on yourselves, working on ourselves, it's so important.
Sorry again.
Oh,
We
back.
have more outage.
We were just closing. We were just closing off. Some people have left. That's okay. But I was just saying, okay. Just saying that my very last question was about like understanding, those relationships that no longer serve us, and at what point, I mean, is it really about doing the work on ourselves first before we run away from relationships?
Yes, true. I would say let go before you give up.
Yes.
Let go within before you give up. we can always give up. It's easy, but let go within. And then if it doesn't work, after a point, you can give up.
I'm just putting that up there because that is profound wisdom.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you
Yes.
all in connecting. It's been amazing. Thank you. And thank you, Stella, for having me.
No,
Giving
thank
this,
you.
creating this platform for all of us. Amazing.
Yeah, no, it is my absolute pleasure, especially when we get people on like you who can just give us something to think about and help ourselves, develop ourselves, to lead a healthier and happier life. And I look around in the world and I think, God, there is so much out there that is so wrong, but we can only do that if we're within ourselves, if we're become happier, healthier, more balanced. And if everyone did that work and did more like that, maybe we would have less craziness in the world. Anyway, thank you as always, Rajesh, for all your wisdom, your generosity and time, everything. And lovely to see everybody. Have a beautiful week ahead and see you again soon, and take care. Bye bye. Love to all. Big virtual hugs to all. Lots of hugs.